Hi, I'm Len Schlesinger, and I'm here today with two Babson MBA alums, Charlie Burckmyer and Scott Noll, who formed a search fund, Nob Hill Partners, with Will Stevenson, one of their investors, who's invested in other search funds as well, and with Kevin Mulvaney, a professor at Babson who teaches a course on buying a small business. Kevin's a seasoned practitioner in entrepreneurial finance, and both Charlie and Scott took his course. Let's start off with a question to Kevin. Kevin, what's a search fund, and can you give us some background on how these work?
Search fund is a unique investment opportunity started by Rick Grossbeck out of Stanford, where effectively young MBA students who have prior business experience are able to raise funds to fund a 2-year process where they can search by a company. Usually they raise funds from approximately 10 or 12 investors. Those investors get an opportunity then to invest in the actual acquisition opportunity, and it's a tremendous vehicle for bright, aggressive young people who are looking for alternative entrepreneurship.
Charlie and Scott, I know I met you just shortly after you were kind of getting through the phase of trying to raise money for this effort, but how did Babson prepare you to consider this alternative for buying a business?
Yeah, you mentioned, Len, that we took classes with Kevin. I think Babson, number one, their sort of experiential curriculum here was pretty important for us in actually getting out and examining businesses that we wanted to buy and seeing what it was like. You know, with Kevin, really knowing what small business acquisition was all about. And then specifically, we got introduced to the model through Babson, through a speaker that Kevin brought on. So that was pretty important.
Yeah, I think I would add to that as well. It gave us the practical experience to know what it was like to actually search for a business, so we could relate to that when we were out raising money, telling investors like Will that we already had some experience practically out there in the marketplace. We knew what the flavor was. We knew what types of businesses we already liked. So that helped us not only in the fundraising process, but now actually while we're searching for business, we have that experience to lean on.
But let's go back to the fundraising process. I know you've successfully closed your first fund and you're in the search phase right now, but what was the money raising process like?
It was very difficult. I think it was rewarding in the sense that we were the first Babson team locally here to go out and raise the search fund. But that actual process was thorough in the sense that it forced Charlie and I to really strategically plan for what we needed to do to run a business effectively. So in that process, I think we learned a lot, and also we're able to lean on some of the investors, even in the fundraising process, to give us some guidance and feedback along the way.
Anything other than hard you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, I think I don't want to underscore too heavily, but it was challenging. It was the market that we all know, the Dow plummeting 700 points a day, and I think it was good for us to experience that hardship and have a little bit of a trial by fire when we're sure to see greater challenges going forward.
And now you've got cash, okay? So you're actually in the market buying a company. What's it like today?
Good question. I think it's got its pluses and its minuses. Scott can maybe speak a little bit.
So you're going to talk about the burdens of having cash?
Yeah, it's a sob story, really. No, I think there are a lot of positives. Maybe I'll leave Scott to talk about the tougher parts, but it's nice in that presumably there can be a bit of a slide in valuations corresponding to the market downturn, which can help us in terms of what we get ultimately out of the equation. But I think in terms of what's available on the market now, it's a bit of a challenge finding companies that are healthy, that fit the sort of profile that would actually consider selling, like in this kind of environment.
One important thing to remember is while we do have cash to cover our operating expenses, we have a gun with one bullet, so to speak. We've got to make sure we pick our target very carefully. We've got a lot at stake with this one acquisition that we plan on doing, so we've got to be very thorough and diligent in the process of vetting companies to making sure that opportunity is ideally fit for us.
Yeah. You only get one shot with the cash you've got.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's really, from our perspective as an investor, there are really 4 phases of success to the search fund. There's closing the search fund, which these guys have done. Then there's actually identifying and acquiring a business, which is a whole process unto itself, which can take another period of time. Then they actually have to run the thing. Once the dog's caught the bus, they've actually got to be able to drive the bus. They can't just sit on the back and watch it go. Many search funds will acquire a business and fail in the running of the business. But I think that one of the benefits from Babson's perspective is their alumni body are well suited for running businesses on a day-to-day operations basis and getting their hands dirty. And the 4th phase, which isn't always succeeded in every search fund, is actually exit. So it's really a multi-stage process.
Well, as an investor in this and other search funds prior to this, what attracts you to Charlie and Scott, and what attracts you to the topic of search funds generally?
Well, we've been looking at search funds for 20 years, so it's a market we've played in frequently. What we liked about Charlie and Scott was that it's a Babson search fund. I like Babson. I'm an alumni here, so it works pretty well from my perspective. I think that Babson's curricula, the professors, are well suited for bringing students into real operational roles in the smaller, $5 million to $15 million business arena.
One of the interesting things that happened during the fundraising process, where Scott and Charlie would meet with investors, and many investors would diligently follow up with the references that they gave. And when I would get calls concerning the courses they took, their performance, etc., these were not 2-minute calls. These were 20-minute interviews, deep plunges into what they had done, what they were all about, what experience they had, what training they had. And it was very interesting because we were able to tell the Babson story, which was not as well known. And the reality is, in a survey that a student fellow conducted last spring, Babson has the leading set of training courses for investment banking, for buying a business, of any MBA school in the world. And we were able to tell potential investors of how the environment in which they operated, and as Will said, the type of practical experience they get in putting integrated plans together. So it was really a tremendous opportunity for them, and I applaud what they did, but also it turned out to be a great opportunity for Babson to tell its story.
Well, let me have you tell the story a little bit more, which is your course, Buying a Small Business, is a legendary course at the institution. I'd really be intrigued in you spending a few moments bringing us up to speed on how it actually works.
We have a suite of courses effectively that we've developed. It started with a middle market merger acquisition course, and the unique aspect of the way we deliver the course was I'm a practitioner. I come from the M&A world, and I was able to get investment banking firms and business owners to allow us to use the real deal book that was presented by the investment bankers when the companies came to market. So effectively, everything we do in mergers and acquisitions, we subsequently developed a Buying a Small Business course which focused on enterprise value companies 5 million and under. All are very practical, they're real world, and the students are able to put together integrated proposals. It's not just valuation, it's not just guessing how to finance it, it's how are you going to run it, how are you going to negotiate it, what are you going to do strategically with the company, and how do these all yield a return on investment. So the way we deliver the course is unique in the world from the surveys that have been done, and they're also fun to teach because the students are learning what it's like to actually be out there. So when Charlie and Scott were able to tell their story, they also had taken our third course, which was Buying a Small Business, the search experience, where they actually had already gone out to search to buy companies for credit while they were in school, having taken the merger and acquisition and Buying a Small Business course. So they knew what the market was all about, and now they're playing that game for real.
So my assumption is that this is not your first story of real people doing real things.
No, this is our fourth search fund. One dissolved about 4 years ago because the two partners, the two students, ended up going in a different direction. We have a student from Chile who has formed a search fund, and they bought a company. They bought a company last June. We have a fourth search fund in Guatemala that is just about to be launched. And ironically, from the first year MBA students, 2 students have already come to see me about possibly launching a search fund. So I'm already coaching and working with 2 first-year students, which is the right time for them to think about alternative entrepreneurship as they have another 15 months left in their academic careers here. So we teach this as part of the entrepreneurship suite, and we teach this effectively as one of the ways you can be entrepreneurial, and effectively they've taken a pretty big challenge in their version of entrepreneurship.
Well, since this is all about actually continuing to manage the process of figuring out how to get access to great business opportunities, you might want to use this as a moment to tell the world exactly what kind of businesses you're looking for.
Sure, Scott, you want to start off with that?
Sure. We're looking for a service business that really has a strong technology component to it. where Charlie and I can leverage our skills both in sales management and business development to really grow the business. So we are ideally looking for a company that has revenues between $5 and $15 million and between $1 million and $3 million of free cash flow.
And if someone's living with that business right now and looking for the opportunity to transact with you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, a number of different avenues. Probably the easiest would be our website, but we can get phone numbers out there as well. But we're also pretty closely networked in with the intermediaries. They may be talking to you anyway. Might it be their accountants or their attorneys? Certainly business brokers and investment bankers. In the area and nationally, we're working hard to have our face in there so that they know to reach out to us if they have a viable opportunity for us.
We'll take this opportunity to give you the name of our web address.
Right.
It's www.nobbhillpartners.com.
www.nobbhillpartners.com. Now, if you talk about future generations of Babson students and you reflect on your experience to date and think about the best advice you can offer to them, what would it be?
Yeah, I think to be fair, we're very excited about the model, and you've heard a lot about why it's a positive environment for it and a great structure. I think one does have to keep in mind, and talking with Will a bit about his perspective on the investor side, that there are a number of challenges in those phases, each somewhat accelerated from the next. And so I think any student considering the model also has to weigh in that a great deal of tenacity is required, I think, to gain the successes that the model typically shows.
And Will, any comments to others who are thinking about search funds?
Well, it's a growing market. It's an opportunity for us as investors to see businesses we would never have seen before, because it's not something you can just go out and buy on a market. And it's great fun businesses to find, to investigate and operate. And they're not all successful, and they've all got challenges at every phase. And the fun thing for us is that the transitions from search to operations, it's really looking at the down and dirty of how these businesses work and make money.
Babson's all about entrepreneurial thought and action, and with our cohort here of just recent graduates, investors, and faculty, we have an ample demonstration of the ability to translate the theoretical constructs that exist in the world of entrepreneurship into real, practical, roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty work that results in real investments, in real search funds, that results in the acquisition of real businesses, and the continuing stream of interest coming into Kevin for new businesses going forward. It really does represent the best of what Babson has to offer. And so I thank you coming to tell your story. I thank you for investing in the story. I thank you for starting all this noise. And thank you all for listening in today. Bye-bye.